life provides quite a bit of tension naturally, especially if you're striving and pushing to be a great organization.
That's Steve Carse, co-founder of King of Pops.
When you're in it, it's really hard. When you look back at it, you look at it as like, oh my gosh, that was fun. If everything is on easy street, your brain's going to get kind of bored.
I'm Michael Mogill, founder and CEO of Crisp, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. Crisp started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer. Steve Carse is a serial entrepreneur and founder of the beloved Atlanta-based brand King of Pops. Steve and his brother built the brand from humble beginnings, growing from a single pushcart in 2010 to a national presence today, embraced by festivals, food markets, and national grocery brands. I sat down with Steve to discuss why the best long-term growth strategy is showing up authentically, how intentionally shaping your culture becomes a differentiator competitors can't copy, and the mindset shift required to turn a local brand into a scalable national presence.
You probably need to tell your story and the story of the organization probably 20x more than you are. You probably need to lean in and host events that 5% of people come to and you want 80% of people to come to. As a leader in the organization, you have to do all of the things in order for it to maybe work, and you have to be okay with that.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. Before we begin today's episode, I want to remind you that we aren't beholden to any sponsors or run any ads on this podcast. This allows us to present all of our episodes raw and unfiltered. I'm not going to push any made-to-order meal services on you or try to save you any money on your car insurance. That being said, I have one small request. If you receive any value from this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. Pay the fee so we can keep this podcast free. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Beautiful place.
Thank you. I'm excited to have you here. So we're coming off of the summit that you spoke at, the Game Changer Summit this year. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious. So for people who are going to be listening to this, if they're in Atlanta, they probably know King of Pops. It's a staple. But let's say for those outside of Atlanta, maybe outside of the Southeast, if you could speak a little bit about your background, maybe just your upbringing. I'm always curious, like just with entrepreneurs, were you entrepreneurial from an early age, or did that not really begin until 2010?
I think I was pretty entrepreneurial. I had an uncle that was doing all kinds of some legal, some illegal stuff in Alaska that kind of inspired me a lot. In addition to being an entrepreneur, he had like great stories to tell, so I always looked up to him. But I had an eBay store when I was in high school. Instead of bagging groceries, I used to jump into ponds at disc golf courses and resell those discs, and always kind of trying to figure out. Yeah, I guess. I just watched that Beanie Baby movie, and it did make me think about how weird eBay was when it first came out. But yeah, so I think I was always pretty into that. Didn't really think it was going to be a real thing, just because it's how either my parents did, and then I got laid off in 2009 during the Great Recession. And popsicles was like this thing in the background that me and my brothers would kind of daydream about, like, wouldn't it be great if we did this one day? I was 25, got laid off. I was like, oh, that day should probably be today, or else it's never going to happen. Thought I'd do it for a year or two, and here we are 15, almost 16 years in, slinging pops.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been awesome.
Why ice pops?
Sheesh. It's a great question. I think right place, right time for us. We saw the paleta is big in Latin America, and my oldest brother is an anthropologist. He was in Panama and Ecuador. We traveled throughout Latin America, Central America. The paleta is a big deal, and it seemed like easy enough to do, but also like it would fit the farmers market scene. Like food trucks were a big deal in Atlanta in like 2010. Like everyone's kind of over it at this point, but back then people were like, oh, I could get something on the go. Wouldn't that be cool? So it seemed easy enough to do. I had $7,000. I thought I'd be able to start it with that much money without going into debt, which I accomplished just barely. And the rest is history. And instead of that 7,000 was a nice constraint. Instead of having like a pretty shop, which is what I imagined, like got a little push cart because that's all I could afford. And that ended up being better than anything we could have thought of if we had all the money in the world.
So I'm just curious, like, how do you even get started with this? Do you look at it and say, like, we're going to get some molds and we have freezers? And
I've got a picture of this, but it's basically the first pops I made, which includes some of the ones we still have, like chocolate sea salt, banana pudding, pineapple habanero, were in medicine cups. And I flipped over like an art canvas. I'm a terrible painter, but it was like, I was trying to be cool and I lived in a loft, so I would kind of like do some painting. But I flipped over one of those canvases, lined them in there, put them in my freezer. And those were the first. I had friends over to kind of taste them. They tasted about like if you made them tomorrow, and then we just kept working at it with anything, but certainly with popsicles, you just keep working at it. And I think we probably make among the best in the world. We strive to make the best in the world, but we're certainly still trying to improve every day.
So I want to dig in on that. Actually, two things. One is with the flavors, you could have just gone vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, but you're going like raspberry lime. Like what was the impetus of doing something unique?
I took it too far. Yeah. So I think I wanted to stand out. And maybe it has, just like an idea of marketing. I don't know that I knew it was marketing at the time, but I knew I needed to stand out a little bit from what you could buy, at Kroger or whatever at that point in time. And I was inspired by the flavors that I was seeing in Latin America. We always tried the weirdest stuff there because we were on a trip, and that's just kind of what you do. I kind of got brought back to earth. I remember the first couple weeks, I had a shared kitchen. I had to push about a mile up the street to my gas station corner. And I'd pass construction sites and preschools, and they'd look at my offerings and it'd be like grapefruit mint and blackberry ginger and stuff. And they'd be like, do you have strawberry? I'm like, mm-mm. Like, okay, well, I'll get that if you have that. So the next day I went home and would make them some strawberries just to sell. So now it's kind of a good mix. We've got some adventurous stuff. We've got some straightforward stuff. We've got some stuff in the middle. Even if it doesn't we don't have to talk a whole lot about product quality here in Atlanta. As we expand beyond Atlanta, I think we need to do a better job of it because we don't have the same halo. But there's something to be the human just kind of assumes if you're making something with a culinary inspiration, they're going to assume that you're using good ingredients, and we are. So I think that took us a long way. It was maybe intuitive, but it worked.
Can you elaborate on that just in terms of what makes them the best in the world? It's the farm to table approach of this?
It's all of the above. And I think you can make a better popsicle at home if you had our equipment and you were making 12 of them. The attention to detail that you could put. And then there's popsicle brand popsicle that they make a great product, but it's in a football field long piece of machinery. So we're in an artisan size that our batches are 10, 15,000 a day. And I think that's our space. That's where we're really comfortable and really, really good. I think we make the best at that scale. But yeah, it's sourcing. It's a heck of a lot of work on sourcing. There's a lot of things that you can learn to improve the process. So a couple easy ones are every popsicle you'll see has salt in it. Just like you put salt on roads, it melts things. So it's a freezing point depressor and it makes the texture slightly better. And it also brings out flavors or other things. The faster you freeze it, the smaller the ice crystal will be and the better the texture will be. So there's a lot of things that are process related that you'll learn, ingredient related that you'll learn, and then kind of flavor and inspiration and story. Those three, I think, in combination make it. And it's all just subjective anyway. So everyone can say they think they're making the best pops in the world, but I really, really think it.
What was your vision just when you first started for King of Pops, just with the first push cart?
First vision, which has changed a lot, was have a job that was not in insurance and have a story to tell. After my brother, he was a lawyer. He quit his job to join me, much to the chagrin of my dad and mom when we were making really no money 2 or 3 months in. And that didn't really stress me out that much because he's a smart guy. I knew he'd be all right. But once we started to have employees, I think that's kind of when it clicked in my mind that I wanted this to feel like something powerful or meaningful or not a waste of their time, basically, to be there. And that's been kind of my path ever since. My goal. It's hard. It's a tricky one, but it's a fun one.
What was the point where you're okay, I think we've got something here? You're starting to hit whether there's some sort of milestone where you're I think this could really become something.
It's a good question. I think it really became something fairly quick. CNN picked us up because of kind of the tie-in to the Great Recession and lemonade from lemons type of story fairly quick. And we were getting long lines and stuff, but each year for the first 2 or 3 years, I was terrified it was a fad I think it might have been somewhat of a fad, like cupcakes or all of these things that you see come and go. So I think even though we were selling a lot of pops the first 2 or 3 years, I felt every winter like, well, it's been a good run. I'm not sure anyone's going to remember us once it gets warm again. I'd say maybe year 4 really kind of started to feel like we had a real business and it wasn't just 100% hustle and all of that. But it took a while and took a lot of selling of, at that time, prices have gone up, but $2.50 transaction. It takes a lot of those to add up.
Right. What was the strategy just in terms of just marketing and scale and getting known? I mean, I know you mentioned you got picked up by the media. There was some earned media, but it seems like a lot of it was just grassroots marketing.
Yeah. I think we think about it now from a sense of like, we don't do much paid or any of that. I think there's like a good place for it, but our biggest investment is just putting the cart around town. And so along with putting the cart around town, you're going to have a lot of flops. You're going to have a lot of events where you sell 7 pops, but you're going to get a lot of impressions of people that walk by that are going to see the rainbow umbrella, that are going to have a conversation. And our strategy is you can kind of be paying for impressions on, Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever, YouTube, or we can be paying for them for the actual product in the actual world. So that's been kind of what we've done from day one. We just want to show up and be out there and be like almost expected to be at things. And that takes a lot of work. And it's a hard model kind of to implement. It's easy for somebody to be on board and nod along with that. It's pretty hard to do. It's pretty hard to go to an event that ends up being frustrating and you stick around and then you keep picking yourself up and going to another event that hopefully will be better. But you do it enough times and it adds up.
What were some of the biggest challenges just early on in terms of scaling? I mean, just going from, I don't know what the number was in terms of number of pops before.
Yeah.
Now 10,000 a day. I mean, just in the scale.
Yeah, all of it. I've got kids now and I certainly I hope I wouldn't have done it before, but it was basically get up, finish the batch from the night before, go to an event, get home, make pops. And that was April to October. We'd lose weight. We'd look gaunt. Like we'd look terrible. We'd feel bad. Like we looked forward to like driving places because that was like a break. And it was also terribly fun. We were doing all of these things that we never would have probably gotten to do, going to events that we wouldn't have gotten to do otherwise. So it's like, it was both. Life turned up pretty loud for quite a while.
What about, fast forward to today, like what are some of the biggest challenges now?
I think the biggest challenge we're facing right now is like, how do we translate what, like you already alluded to, we're a bit of a household name in Atlanta. How do we translate that to other markets? Because people don't like the strategy of it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to put together the playbook of like, how can you do it faster? And a little bit of that is things we've learned and things that are working. And a little bit of that is like borrowing from what other brands are doing and what other people that we look up to have done well. So I think we've got areas to improve there. And that's where I keep myself busy thinking and reading and trying to learn and learning from our franchisees. That's been pretty good because most of them have cool, interesting backgrounds of their own that are applicable almost always. It's a pretty flexible, like we call them cartrepreneurs because it's a hard word to spell and hard to say, but it kind of embodies this idea. There's not really it's not 4 walls. You could be at a bar mitzvah one day and you can be at a, I don't know what the other end of the spectrum is, but something very opposite from a bar mitzvah later that day, and you just got to be ready for all of it.
Like a quinceañera.
Yeah, there you go.
So let's talk about the cartrepreneurs. Like what, I guess, what are they, and then why would somebody want to do this? Because I've seen them, and they're very, very passionate. They're very excited, and they bring the whole family out.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah. So basically, in COVID, everyone's got their COVID story. For us, it was, Braves weren't playing, Delta wasn't having us out to caterings, graduations weren't happening, music festivals weren't happening. So we were like, this isn't good. And we'd always said no. People would always say, could I get a cart and just sell in my neighborhood or whatever? We said, I'm flattered, but we're doing just fine. And then suddenly we weren't doing just fine. So same person, even more people started coming because they had lost their jobs. They had been impacted. And it kind of took off, much like us getting a cart out of necessity. It kind of took off and almost immediately seemed better because they were able to have authentic connections with the PTA or their church or whatever, whereas we had a sales department that was calling and it was going to be 2, 3, 4 degrees away. So it just worked. almost immediately. And it felt more on brand than what we kind of were even doing at that point. The scary part is like, okay, this is random person from random place representing your brand. And that still is scary. And it's a thing you just have to take like really seriously. And also it's a risk like anything else. And we take it pretty seriously, but have gotten great people so far.
What gets somebody excited to be a cartrepreneur? Like why do they want to do it?
I think some people have been like burnt out in corporate America and they just see it as like about as opposite as it can get. And they probably over fantasize how great it's going to be. It is hard work for sure still. And then I think there's other people that are just getting started in entrepreneurship where like it's a way to get an MBA for a lot less money and hopefully even make money in less than a year. It's business. It's like a lemonade stand, but set up for you and a better brand and a little bit on steroids. And we're here to help make people succeed in their areas.
I love it.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears to the book. You wrote the book, Work is Fun. What led you to write the book? Like why do this in the first place?
I was a journalist. That was my first paid gig out of college. I've always written and I've always read a lot. I've gone through like just all the business books I possibly could. I felt like I have a story to tell, and I think we've learned some stuff. And I think a lot of the times people will ask like how we did it or why it's special. And I still like struggle to succinctly say it, but I wanted to try to get some of that down on paper, both for like growth, like introducing the brand to people in new areas, and then for our own team to kind of get a good sense of where we're at and how we got there.
So for people who have not read the book, they hear the title and they say, well, work's not supposed to be fun.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Like, well, how do you define fun? Is it water slides and ping pong tables? Like,
it's not that. Yeah. And I think the title is appropriate. And I don't think I thought through, like I said, one of my goals was for my team. There's nothing kind of more awkward feeling than going into a meeting with your team and you're their boss and you hand them a book that says work is fun. And they're like, this is my first day. You're a little bit kooky for sending me this, but it needs to be hard in order for it to be fun. It needs to be a challenge in order for it to be fun. I think one of the chapters is about play, which is probably like loosely ping pong table-esque, but you could certainly do it with no tools. So I think we generally just take ourselves and our work, myself included, far too seriously. And we just need to remind ourselves every once in a while when we're super stressed, like, this probably doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's just the general sense that I wish I could embody more often. And I mean, a little bit of why you write something as a reminder to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like most people, I mean, especially those listening to this podcast, are sold on the idea of a great culture. Like everybody wants a great culture. They look at championship sports teams and they say, that's a great culture.
Yes.
But what that looks like internally can be different at every organization.
100%.
So I'm just curious from your perspective of why fun? Like why is that? I agree with you because I think when you say fun, you mean engagement.
Yeah. I think engagement is a good corollary. I mean, I think engagement is fun. I think curiosity is fun. I think meaning is fun. So yeah, I think that fun is such a vague word that can mean so much to different people. But another way to put it is like, this should be filling you up in some way. And I think one thing that I like to point out is it's easy, like I talked about the corporate America bit already, like it's easy for that to seem like the book is poo-pawing that. Like the opportunity for fun at work, I think, is at nearly all organizations. It's a two-way piece where like the employee needs to show up and do it and the employer needs to try to show up to make that happen. But I don't even know if AIG in my day could have been fun or not fun because I was just committed to it being terrible. When I took the job, I felt like I was like selling out, and I had decided that nights and weekends were going to be when I had my fun and vacations, but work was just going to be a sacrifice. So my belief is that like, that's terrible. It doesn't need to be that you're going to work for something that you wrote down as your passion when you were 11 or whatever, but you do need to like find ways where you can find whichever of those words you choose, engagement or meaning, and that's up to you. It's a choice. It's a choice that you can make.
So let's say somebody who's listening to this, they have somebody at their organization that's like young Steve, who is just believes that work is not fun. It is just something that I have to go to have to pay the bills. I read that you even kind of evolved your thinking on this to where not 100% of people in the organization are going to just view this as like the number one thing in their life, right?
Yeah, that was tough for me. That was a tough pill to swallow. I remember thinking like everyone is going to love this to the max. And I think, that's not realistic.
But how do you reach that person who may have this?
You may not. I think you just have to try. You may not reach them. They might be like I was, where they're shut off. But I think you probably need to tell your story and the story of the organization probably 20x more than you are. You probably need to lean in and host events that 5% of people come to and you want 80% of people to come to, 20 times more than you are. You have to, as a leader in the organization, you have to do all of the things in order for it to maybe work. And you have to be okay with that. There's no guarantee it's going to work, but if you don't do it, it's definitely not going to work. That's tough. That's hard. And it's hard for me. I mean, I wrote about it in the book, and I still I have a hard time getting myself motivated to host a event and try to get creative about it. Because I do remember the stinging feeling of like 4 of our 40 people came for the after hours event that was not mandatory. Like, it's hard. You don't forget it. You don't forget how that feels. You spent time and energy and money on it and nobody shows up. You got to do it.
Yeah. And you got to keep doing it. Because I remember the exact same experience that you just described. I remember we did a team outing because everybody was asking for a team outing and we spent all this money. And at the time, I think we had like 20 employees and maybe like 5 or 6 showed up. Yeah. I remember we rented out a movie theater and like 8 showed up.
Yeah, you just gotta keep doing it.
And then you experience that and you think, why would I keep doing this?
Yeah.
But I look at it more so from the perspective of, for the ones that do show up, all right, and then it starts to compound over time. Yeah. And you talk about this in the book in terms of just taking pride in an organization, that compounding the same way that investments compound.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's true. I mean, I know for myself, I'm wearing my King of Pop shirt. It's my uniform every day. It originated from just like, I might get a call like Superman to be at a popsicle event within 1 hour, so I needed to be in uniform. But now it's a barometer for me of like, how do I feel about the organization? And if I feel kind of not that great when I put it on, it's probably a wake-up call for me to do something a little bit differently. But yeah, I've seen that. I know it. The people that it pained me when they left the organization, they were still so proud of what we had done. And like, at some point, somebody might need to out-earn what like a popsicle company can pay you. And that's A-okay. There's a lot of talented people. So, but I think even seeing those people be so proud of King of Pops as like where they had one of their more formative beginning to their career has been really inspiring to me and made me feel like it's worth it. So yeah, the pride can even compound after you leave in some ways, which is weird. I've never exactly said it out loud that way.
What about when you're interviewing, like when you're bringing in new team members into the organization, like what are you looking for? What are you vetting for? Just because a lot of it is, I mean, to some extent, what your culture is who you hire and who you fire.
I think for us, enthusiasm is the biggest one. It's an easy one to fake, so it's a hard one to really interview for. But if they're not doing it for an interview, they're definitely not going to do it 3 months from then, after they've been at the cart or whatever for a long time. And then, I mean, I think entry level, sometimes we look at resumes. I almost wish we just really shouldn't even look at a resume for most of the jobs that we have in our organization when the majority of our hiring is pop slingers and pop makers. And it might be kind of relevant what you've done before, but probably not. But I think enthusiasm and curiosity are the things that I'd like to say, hard things kind of to interview for. But what about you? How do you do that? I need to be better at it, I think.
Well, we try to talk them out of it.
That's a good strategy.
We spend a lot of time with that in the sense that if I can talk you out of it, this probably is not for you. We try to be very, very, very like explicit and realistic about the worst parts of the role. And it's really just trying to differentiate those who are looking for a job versus those who really want to work at Crisp.
Yeah.
And if so, it's like, well, why? And over time, if you wait long enough, you'll find somebody that's read your book, that listens to your podcast, that's been following the brand for a long time.
Yeah, they know all that
stuff. And then
stuff.
On the day they come in the interview, they're so excited. And the day that they're hired, they tell their spouse, like they are so thrilled that you get someone who's going to be very passionate, as opposed to the person who hits submit on LinkedIn to 100 places. And then, the first one that responded is the first interview.
Yeah. That is true. I mean, we're hiring, like I said, a lot of frontline folks, and maybe I don't have that luxury. Maybe that luxury for all of them. I wish I did. But then it's like, how do we get them to want to show up or do one extra thing that isn't in their job title? And so we provide a lot of opportunities for that. And like the example that is kind of maybe most relatable in some ways and not relatable at all in others is like, if somebody in the kitchen has an idea for a popsicle flavor and we make that flavor, it's probably about as good as the flavor Nick and I would have come up with like as an idea. But they're like so stoked that day to make it. And they're doing the same muscle memory things of putting the popsicle stick in and filling the molds and all that. But if it's their idea, their creation, it suddenly becomes 10x more fun. So I think there's always opportunities for stuff like that if we're thinking about it as well.
Yeah. Now I know some people might say, well, especially those that know the brand King of Pops, they're like, of course, people would be excited to be a part of King of Pops, but it was not always that way. And as you mentioned, between like the pop slingers and the pop makers, like I'm sure there's popsicle companies out there, probably the majority, where the person in the factory is not very excited about the work that they're doing and doesn't take a whole lot of pride in what they're doing.
I'm sure.
And I'm just curious as to how you drive that type of culture, because it's very unique. Any experience I've ever had with any cart, with anybody at King of Pops, like they love it. They're excited to be there.
Yeah. I was. We were at Shaky Knees this weekend. It's a little bit different than the way you're asking, but it is like a reunion of sorts when people like remember a slinger from a year's past. And they don't know them at all, but they're like, oh, I saw you here when the Pixies were playing or whatever back in whatever. And they'll give them a hug. Like, oh yeah, that was awesome. I had a blank flavor. Like it's so surreal in that way. But what I come back to is like you have to care just a heck of a lot as a leader. And you want to have other people care that much. And I think kind of what we were laughing about earlier is like, they're probably not going to care as much. But so if you don't care that much and then they care like 50 or 60% as much as you, it's not going to be enough for it to kind of show up in a positive way. So I probably at some points in my life have cared a little bit too much, like where it's like I'm a little bit too connected to the brand, and like it does pain me like emotionally when things don't go well. But if people sense that and they pick up on that, and they're going to be hopefully, trying to get to where they care a similar amount.
In the book, you talk about ownership is free to take. For somebody who's listening, I mean, it's mostly founders, but let's say somebody who works at a law firm, who may not have like equity or authority.
It's the popsicle example. So I kind of burned it a little bit too early, but basically you can take ownership of something without it being assigned. So, I mean, one of the examples in the book is we've got like these old pickup trucks. We don't have like a fleet card or any of this stuff. They're just like old Nissan and Tacomas Toyota Tacomas and Nissan Frontiers. And there's this dude that 3 or 4 years in just said like, Nick and Steve, they're busy. These things don't have washer fluid. The check engine light's on. Like, I'm just going to start doing that. And we would have had to have been crazy to say like, no, don't do this thing. Yeah. And he immediately, like, in our eyes, were like, oh my gosh, this guy's going somewhere. We were like excited for him to do it and set him up in a way that it worked for him to do it. He like wanted to do the oil changes at his house and stuff. So, we paid him the same rate we would have if he took him to Jiffy Lube, and he was able to make some extra money. And he took ownership of that. And I think there's usually just something that you can do that no one's going to stop you from doing. And it can just be your thing. And they'd be excited about it.
Now, I want to get your perspective on something, because especially out of this pivot out of 2020, and a lot of the world has gone remote work. It sounds like working at King of Pops isn't the sort of thing that you can do remotely.
Yeah, do remotely.
I mean, it's very much focused on like human interaction in person.
Yeah.
But just as a whole, what's your perspective on that? Like, in the importance of those interactions?
Oh man, yeah, we have pretty much everyone has to be there to actually do their work. And then there are people like, you can do the books remotely and you can do social media kind of remotely and stuff. But yeah, I mean, my take on it is very trust-based and giving people the latitude to do the work in a way that works for them. I do think we've had to put in like this is when we're going to be at the office. This is a great time to be at the office, because if you don't do that, like, and somebody shows up Thursday at 5:30 and they're the only one ever there together, like there is some, I think, planning that needs to go in for like to make those interactions happen. But in general, you have to trust that they're going to do the work. Let them know like loosely, hey, I think it is important. We have like days where we say, if you can be in the office, be in the office, but it's not like a check in at 9, leave at 5 type of thing. I think it's a tricky one, because I just get both sides of it so much.
Yeah.
So I think hybrid is where we've kind of landed, but from like somebody that spent a lot of money on an office, which I think like you did as well probably, is like you do kind of think about, okay, it was 5 days and we weren't utilizing this thing for 2 days, and now we're maybe using it 2 or 3 days. And so you try to rationalize it business wise, and you kind of maybe that's not healthy, but I don't know. How do you think about that?
So the irony is we bought this building in March of 2020.
That's what she was telling me.
So that's when the whole project started. And it was placing a bet on the importance of human connection. At a time when, the whole world was scattering, I felt that I think this will become more important, more impactful. Like people going to concerts and events and so on is much more meaningful when everybody's sitting at home. Like those types of in-person experiences matter. So I looked at it that way. And then the other thought I had was just when we went very much remote in 2020, like 2021, like we were doing a lot of the workshops and things like that remotely. But through that experience, I realized that nobody wants to go to Disney World remotely. Yeah. Like no one wants their kids to learn remotely. Yeah. And I get it from the standpoint of like someone's at a place in their career and they don't want to make a long commute, et cetera, or they want to find more balance, that sort of thing. Yeah. But is it what is best for the company, for the organization and the team as a whole? Yeah. Is that like how we're going to do our best work? And I don't mean to sound selfish saying this, but if we have this big vision and these people we want to impact and support, and that, then I think the impetus is just to align with people who also want to participate in that. Yeah. But could we produce our best work if we're all like looking at this as like a part-time focus?
Probably not. Yeah, I feel the same way. It's definitely an issue or a challenge or an opportunity, no matter which of those you choose, that's not going away.
You talk about like introducing like tension within a business. And I love this because it's like work is fun, but you talk about, but it's hard to get there and it's hard to create this type of culture and environment. What have been some of the things that you've done that have introduced tension?
More often I'm not introducing, it's being introduced to me by, something breaking, or I guess maybe signing up for too many opportunities, like pushing the team a little bit too hard to be in too many places at once is definitely within our core values. But I think in general, life provides quite a bit of tension naturally, like especially if you're striving and pushing to be a great organization. And so for me, it's always just like, I keep going back to the music festivals because they're like the most dramatic example, but you'll show up at 9:30 because you have to be there before gates, and you'll leave at like 2:30 in the morning. The whole like grind ideology is very out of fashion, but when you go through that with somebody for 3 or 4 days, when you're in it, it's really hard, although you're having fun. When you look back at it, you look at it as like, oh my gosh, like that was fun. Could you do that 52 weeks a year? Should you do that 52 weeks a year? Definitely not. But sprinkled in ever so often, and for us, it happens to be all during like the popsicle season, and then you take a deep breath after you get through it, I think is like, I think it's critical for it to be fun. If everything is on easy street, your brain's going to get kind of bored.
So I agree 100%. I think it's very much if people are in the foxhole with you and they go through some period of adversity, you form bonds and connections. Yeah. So what about when new people come into the organization that have not been through the come up, that were not there in the early days and the grind, and you have a bunch of people that were, and they're so passionate about the brand, but somebody new's coming in, it's not their fault. They weren't there for that. How do you get them to be as bought in as everybody else?
I think for us, like we would try to, whether it's at any role, it might not make sense for them to go out on the cart, but we try to like kind of facilitate that. And sometimes it's a little bit forced, and you don't want it to be too forced. Usually it's like, 3 people have called out and we have a $6,000 catering, so come with me. we need your help. So that just kind of takes time, but it's a good question. I don't think there's a really quick way.
It's what I'm struggling with, by the way. So I asked this selfishly.
Yeah, it's a good one. I think it's a quick one to like, it's a difficult one to fake. I think you can kind of provide the opportunities. I think what pops into my mind is you don't want to be like kind of always referring back to that. If like 2 or 3 people weren't there and like 7 were, and you're like, remember that one time we did that one thing that was so awesome? High fiving, and then they're like, oh yeah, I was over at this other place then. I think it just comes with time, but it's a good probably one to be more intentional about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like you need to create situations for them to also experience adversity to come together, right? They're not hazing people, but it's just you take on greater challenges that they can participate in so that they have their own story of navigating that.
You have to be a little bit, I don't know if sneaky is the right word, but I don't think you want to tell them, I'm going to put you in this thing that you're going to hate. but maybe you do.
Tell them they're going to love it.
Yeah, you're going to love this. Get ready.
Exactly. So Steve, just looking back in terms of just, building King of Pops and the other businesses and writing the book, like how have you grown or transformed as a leader, and like what impact has it made for you even personally?
I think for me, and what I feel most proud about is that we've got something now that I just feel I could do the rest of my life. And it obviously can't shrink, but some days I wake up kind of saying like, I want this to go to the moon. I want it to be like, Ben and Jerry's and da-da-da-da-da. But most days I wake up, if I'm in like a good headspace, just thinking like, this is good. I got some things that we definitely need to accomplish, but like, let's just keep this rolling. And I feel just proud of that. I know what it has felt like to not have that. And I think it's most common to not have that and to want like so much more. But somehow like through the businesses and people that I look up to and like how fortunate we've gotten with the brand, I just feel really grateful for where we are. I feel grateful for like the support of certainly the Atlanta community and beyond. And it just feels kind of like I want to be a positive example of entrepreneurship, not necessarily from like the richest or came up with the smartest widget, but just like, yeah, that guy did this thing and we like it and it makes us happy. It seems kind of quaint, but I think it's actually quite hard to kind of stick in that mindset. I wake up some days frustrated, just like everyone. I wake up some days like thinking this thing's not where I wanted to be, or I'm frustrated with it. But by and large, I just feel really grateful for that. I don't even know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does.
Yeah.
How do you decide when you're going to pursue a new venture? You got the Christmas tree business. I'm just curious as to
so we got a lot of ventures. I think in the early days, I like wanted everything to be very like vertically integrated and an ecosystem that was like this utopia of work that no one ever had to leave. And so we were trying to design all that and be completely self-reliant. And I think what happened was we built a lot of okay businesses, but the engine kind of was always the King of Pops experience. And so I think really like, which is hard for me because I can't remember what the word for this, but like when the distracted entrepreneur, my goal now is really to just be a little less distracted. So we exited our food distribution business. We're still doing Tree Elves. It fits very well. And I think it's something that we'll eventually franchise just from a seasonality perspective. The farm, I don't know, it's like my version of a sports car, I guess, which I drive like a little King of Pops wrapped truck, but it's fun and it's a passion project. I want it to be more, but I don't know, maybe it isn't. So I think the phase that Nick and I are in is like, how can we focus on this, and what would it be like if we focus on kind of less, which is maybe opposite of what you're asking, but where we're at a little bit in life. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important to just remain excited and engaged. Not everything has to be like this financial driver, but I'm also curious, how has life changed for you since kids, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's building the business and without kids, and then there's...
I love it. I love it so much, and I think it has made me a better leader in a lot of ways. Like, I'm leaving like at 4 a lot of days. I get in kind of early, but not like ridiculously early. And I mean, I wish I wasn't like ever checking stuff, but I do wait till I get to bed and stuff. So I mean, I think it has allowed there to be something that I care about more, which has been healthy for me. So that's something. But I think in general, it also is like, we built the brand not really for kids. We built it for maybe like foodies and young adults, which is what we were. But probably the majority of our sales are to kids. So it's kind of helped me have like a better perspective about the parents. I used to sell cotton candy pre-King of Pops at Turner Field. And I can just remember like, it's basic. You like kind of get eye contact with the kid. And then as soon as the parent's looking, you got to look away because you don't want to know that you're bringing in the sale. And it's the same thing with Pops, right? I mean, you're basically making a parent's life miserable with this rainbow umbrella because they're either going to have to buy a Pop or they're going to have their kid whine. So I feel like I kind of understand both sides of that conundrum a little bit more. A funny story a parent told me the other day was they took their 3-year-old to the maybe 2-year-old, I don't remember, to the beach for the first time, and there's like 20 rainbow umbrellas out on the beach. And I don't know what his word was for popsicle, but he just kept walking up thinking they were going to have popsicles at all these beach umbrellas. So that was pretty funny.
I love it, man. So as we come to a close, this being the Game Changing Attorney podcast, Steve, what does being a game changer mean to you?
Showing up and trying to write a story. I think the story that you're proud of.
I want to give a huge thank you to Steve for taking the time to join us on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that I can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of my book absolutely free at gamechangingattorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot me a text at 404-531-7691 and I'll answer any question that you've got for me. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it'll help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on our interview with Steve Carse, see the show notes for this episode in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.